what if the companies you deal with online were more than just names on a screen? What if they've evolved into something new? In this explainer, we're going to dig into the fascinating transformation of the legal entity from a pure idea into a real actor in our digital world. This analysis is based entirely on the works of Professor Kiskinov.
So, let's just dive right in. When you think about a massive company, or even your own local government, what exactly are you thinking of? Is it just a logo? A bunch of people in an office? For a long time, the law considered it just an abstract concept. But now that it has this whole other life online, you've got to ask, what does it actually become? To really figure this out, we're going on a bit of a journey. We'll start by rewinding the clock to understand the original, old-school idea of a legal entity. Then we'll see how the internet kind of gave it a new personality, and even a virtual body. We'll also get into how it's basically learning to act all on its own. And then, at the end, we'll pull it all together to see what a legal entity really is today.
All right, first up, we need to set a baseline. Before the internet came along, what exactly was a legal entity? Well, for a very long time, the answer was, well, surprisingly simple. It was just an idea.
Yeah, you heard that right, a legal fiction. It's kind of like a character in a book. The character doesn't really exist, but in the world of the story, they have a name, they can own property, and they can be held responsible for what they do. For well over a century, that's all a company was, a useful story that the law created. And, by the middle of the 20th century, pretty much everyone agreed that was the end of the discussion.
And this quote just nails that old point of view. The legal philosopher S.J.D. was basically saying that the entity itself is an empty shell. What really mattered wasn't this abstract idea, but the real-world actions of the people behind the curtain. The entity was just the stage they acted on.
But then the internet happened. The information age didn't just create a new playground for these legal fictions. It started to completely rewrite the rulebook. That old, simple definition was about to be stretched in ways no one saw coming.
Okay, to understand how things changed, we need to talk about legal capacity. It's a pretty straightforward idea. It's just the basic ability for an entity to have rights and responsibilities, just like a person. But in the digital age, the kinds of rights these entities could have, well, that started to explode. And this is where it starts to get really interesting. All of a sudden, these entities began gaining new kinds of powers. The right to privacy was no longer just about physical files. It was about controlling digital data. We saw the birth of totally new concepts, like the right to be forgotten online. There was even talk in the EU about a fifth freedom of knowledge. It was like the legal entity was suddenly developing a much richer, more complex personality.
But you know what they say, with great power comes new limitations? It turns out that while these entities were gaining all these new rights, their ability to actually use them in the digital world hit some pretty solid walls.
I mean, just think about it. You can't finalize a mortgage with an emoji. Some of the most critical legal actions, like signing a property deed in front of a notary, still demand a physical presence, a real signature. Laws, for instance, like the Bulgarian law on electronic documents, make it clear that the virtual world has its boundaries. Not everything can be done with a click.
So this brings us to the next massive leap. That abstract idea, that legal fiction, started to get something it never, ever had before. A kind of virtual body. A place where you could actually find it.
And this was a huge deal. For the very first time, the law started saying, hey, you legal fictions need a real, designated presence online. An official website became way more than just digital marketing. It was its legally recognized home, a place where the entity could be found and held accountable. The ghost in the machine finally got a mailing address.
And it didn't stop with just a simple website. Think about the last time you had to interact with the government online, maybe to pay taxes or renew a license. You weren't just on a web page, you were likely using a unified portal. These are incredibly complex systems that are designed to be a digital mirror of the entire government agency's structure. The legal fiction was no longer just a static signpost. It was becoming a living, interactive digital organism. So, if the entity now has a body, what's the next logical step in its evolution? Well, what happens when it starts to act for itself? And this is where we get into the really mind-bending stuff, autonomous action.
So let me introduce you to the electronic agent. Now, this isn't some sci-fi concept. It's a real legal term recognized in laws like the U.S. Uniform Electronic Transactions Act. It's basically a piece of software that's designed to act on behalf of the entity to make legally binding statements, like forming a contract, without a human pushing the button every single time.
So how does that actually work? Okay, imagine an airline's website.
The airline itself, the legal entity, sets the general rules. Here are the flight schedules, here are the ticket prices, here are the policies. The electronic agent, that's the booking software on the website, then operates completely on its own within those rules, selling tickets and forming legal contracts with you, the customer. And here's the kicker. The airline is 100% legally responsible for every single action that agent takes.
Okay, so we've looked at virtual rights, online bodies, and software that can act on its own. After that whole journey, where do we end up? We arrive at a totally new synthesized picture of what a legal entity is here in the 21st century.
And here's the big reveal, side by side. The old view was super simple, right? A legal entity was just its legal personality, a bundle of rights and obligations. But today, that's just the starting point. The modern legal entity is this much bigger thing. It's that core personality, plus its virtual models, plus its autonomous electronic agents. It is a completely new animal. So the bottom line is this. The legal fiction has become a legal fact. It's not just an idea anymore. It's a much broader, more complex phenomenon. It doesn't just have rights. It has a tangible online existence and the power to act on its own through its automated agents. The very concept has been transformed from the ground up.
So what? What does all of this actually mean for us in our day-to-day lives? Why should we care that this concept from law books has gotten a major upgrade? Let's wrap it up.
So if we boil it all down, the old textbook definition of a company is out of date. These entities now have a real, tangible presence online, they have software that acts for them, and the whole concept is now much, much bigger than just a bundle of legal rights. The ghost in the machine isn't a ghost anymore. And believe me, this is not just a topic for law school classrooms. The next time you deal with a government portal online, where you click I agree on a new app's terms of service, you are directly interacting with this new type of supercharged legal entity. It's a fundamental change for the architecture of our society, and it is happening all around us right now. And that leaves us with one final and really critical question to think about. As these digital entities get more and more complex, and their electronic agents act with more and more autonomy, where do we draw that line? At what point does a legal tool become a legal actor? That is the profound question we're all going to have to answer.